We believe that the heart of a man is a treasure trove of untold stories, powerful lessons, and profound wisdom. Through authentic dialogues and insightful discussions, we aim to unlock these treasures, one story at a time. So, whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or simply a moment of reflection, you're in the right place. Get ready to be challenged, inspired, and transformed. And now, to guide you through this journey of discovery, please welcome your host, a visionary leader and a true catalyst for change, Dwayne Dwyer, but we affectionately know him as the Mindset Coach.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Hearts of Men podcast. We're your hosts for this evening conversation. My name is Dwayne Dwyer. I go by the Mindset Coach, and I'm joined by my brother, Mr. Tawami Gaddy, also known as the son of Timothy, also known as the Available Man. And he is feeling himself a little bit, y'all, because the Giants looked really good last night. So that being said, I don't want to tell his story. I just want to ask him, bro, how you doing, man? How you doing?
Man, I feel like I told y'all, I feel like I'm having a giant weekend this weekend. It's just colossal. I feel great. I'm always good. It was a busy week to start, kind of cool down on the way down, but here we are Friday, ready to have this impactful conversation. So I'm good, bro. How you doing, bro?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I appreciate you asking that. And like you, again, busy week, but nonetheless, I always look forward to these Fridays. I look forward to having these conversations. I look forward to serving the people as we have these conversations. That's what's important to me. It's not about me. It's not about us on the panel, but it's about them. And so anytime I have the opportunity to sit behind this microphone, I try to ensure that I am giving the people the best version of me at that particular point in time. And I look forward to it. I love it. I appreciate it. And again, it's just one of those highlights of my week. And not just, as always, enjoy having conversation with the brothers on the panel, but I also enjoy it because we get to have conversations with the livest chat and social media. So again, on this channel, we like to recognize you by name. So make sure that you get in the chats, in the comments, and let us know that you're there, because here we want to celebrate you. We want to appreciate you for being here, because we know you could be any other place, but you chose to be here with us, and we do not take that lightly. So that being said, I want to make sure that I give a hearty welcome to Nick D. As always, good to see you. Crystal Everett, as always, good to see you. His divine appointment, as always, good to see you. Welcome. Miss Charlotte Jordan, good to see you, and welcome to this evening's conversation. And I don't want to make sure I don't miss anybody. Okay, and anybody else out there, again, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, whether you're on Instagram or LinkedIn, just say hello so that we can recognize you for being here, because we value your presence. I do need to put one thing up because I don't want to forget that. And that's that. Again, I tell you guys that this will be here every week, and it's going to be something new for you. And this week is, if you have not had the opportunity to purchase Crystal Everett's book, it kind of falls right directly in line with this evening's conversation. So again, scan that QR code and bless Sister Crystal Everett, because she does a lot in this community, and we greatly appreciate her. Anything else I need to go over real quick? Admin notes, things of that nature. Oh, I do have one more thing before we get into it. Next week, next Saturday, is a joint conversation for the hearts of men, for the hearts of women. So it's going to, include both the hearts of men and the hearts of women. So put it on your calendar, next Saturday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think it's going to be a great conversation. So we look forward to that conversation as well. Now, I think that's all.
And that's actually what I was about to hint to, so you could put out. Yeah.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. All right. So that being said, let's go and get this party started. Okay. What if the most dangerous lie you believe is the one you've tattooed across your hearts as your truth? Society screams, speak your truth and live your truth, like it's a modern gospel. But what happens when that truth was written in invisible ink by your deepest fears? By the father who taught you, tears make you weak, by the heartbreak you never healed from. Suddenly, your truth becomes your warden. Right now, 80% of men carry at least one truth that sabotages their dreams. They build lives atop beliefs they've never questioned, beliefs whispering, you're not enough. Risk is reckless. Vulnerability is failure. These aren't truths, they're responses. These responses are rooted in experienced or unwanted outcomes, which can equate to a traumatic event in disguise. This isn't another self help pep talk. We're dissecting the five silent architects of your reality. How nostalgia fossilizes pain into fact, how generational lies become personal commandments, while your brain betrays you 19 times out of 20. This is forensic psychology for the soul. If you've ever felt like your life is running on autopilot while your dreams gather dust, you're not broken, you're incarcerated. That being said, your escape starts in
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
Okay. So that being said, we like to start off these conversations with a very light question, and that question kind of gets us rolling in the right direction. And since this conversation is all about how your beliefs can trap you, and we want to focus on escaping the prison of your personal truth, Brother Gaddy, I want to start off real quick with one question. What are your thoughts when you hear the phrase your truth?
A universal lie.
Okay, say
Oh, elaborate. My bad. Because when I hear the term "your truth," I believe, like, to me, it is the beginning of showing me your self-centeredness. Because my truth means that I am willing to ignore reality to stand on what I stand on, right? And and don't get me wrong, there are some things that you just stand on your square on, right? There's some things you stand 10 toes down on, right? That's my family, that's the Most High, that's my community. But then there's some things that we stand on only because we want to be selfish in that area. Or you can't tell me this is my truth, this is me, this is what I. Yes, but when that my truth begins to hurt the relationships and the people around you, then that my truth is a universal lie. It's set up to hurt. It's set up to box people out. Or no one likes me. No one accepts me for who I am. No, you have created this thought pattern that allows you to always accept you for what you do. And if I keep going, I know I'm going to jump into the conversation. So I'm trying to.
No, man, you're good. You're good. I love it. I love what you're saying here, because I agree. I think to your point, I like you said, universal lie. I like it what you're saying because at the end of the day, when I hear somebody talk about your truth, the first thing that comes to mind is that they have this belief system that they don't want you to question. Like, they don't want you to question the belief system that they have wrapped whatever behavior that exists within that. And then when you start to, say certain things or whatever the case may be, now they get all defensive because it becomes like a stronghold in their life. And so the notion of your truth means that it can exist outside of reality or outside of what is true. And I think that's very dangerous when we have that mindset or we have that mentality. Now, I kind of want to ask an additional question that goes along with this. Where do you think that stems from? Like, where do people get this your truth mentality from?
So I could speak from Tuwami. We go through a lot of ebbs and flows, a lot of ups and downs in life. And sometimes not I'm speaking solely from my experience in life, right? Sometimes life can get so heavy, and a survival mechanism sometimes is to lock into yourself. I have to close everything and everyone out and focus on me. How am I willing to get through this? And, we create mindsets. We create walls in our own mind that allows us to have that survival mechanism, to have, and it may look like resilience, and it may look like what I need to make it through this next phase in life, to get to where I'm going through, in spite of what I'm going through or what I've been through or what's backed up against me. And though those things may have, helped you to stay resilient, as we would say, I think sometimes we look at that and we'll say, now can't nobody tell me nothing. This is my truth because this is what helped me. Now it's a wall you created so that you can survive in this space that you're in, but doesn't necessarily make it the truth. It's just what you needed. Like, and let's be honest, like sometimes it can be something that is true but manipulated. So we'll say stuff like, I ain't worried about it. God got me, right? And God is in control. It's based off of the narrative that God is in control, right?
Right.
But sometimes we use that in the narrative that, regardless of whatever double hockey sticks I cause for anybody else in my life, you can't tell me nothing because God got me. Even though I'm a nasty individual and I have a nasty attitude, God got me. He ain't got that. You created that wall, and you created that personality, and you created that mindset so that you could survive whatever you were through. But I think where we fail at is we don't get to a place to where we're honest with someone that can help us through that.
Yeah. I like that. I think because I tend to talk about the difference between the truth, what is truth, fact, assumption, and opinions. And you hit on the fact piece, and I think you're 100% spot on with that. Did this happen to me? Yes, it did happen. Did I experience this? I give a perfect example for all of those right now who are dealing with the government shutdown. Yeah, it's a true. That is a fact. That is what's going on right now. And again, my heart goes out to everybody who is experiencing this directly or indirectly. But then there's this thing that should be working in the background called your belief system. And if you have that belief system, then that belief system can look at a fact and not necessarily take that fact and consider it to be the truth, right? Because going back to what you said, God got me, right? I spin off of that, right? So, so if you really do believe in that, then the fact that this thing has happened or is happening does not necessarily become what is the truth in your life. It is simply a fact, and we don't necessarily make that fact the governing aspect of our reality. So I think that's kind of like where I will start with that before I get into like where does it stem from? Because I think a lot of times we are not necessarily taught for the most part that we don't necessarily take the fact and make it a reality. We take the belief, and the belief itself, your belief itself, should become your reality regardless of the fact. So now in that vein, what we do, we can exist on a higher plane of existence and never be moved off of that regardless of the fact. We do not deny the fact, but the fact itself is not specific to me. It is a fact that exists out there. And so for me, when I hear this, and I struggle with this sometimes, and I got it. Everybody does not necessarily know that, but I struggle when I hear that because what I'm hearing now is that this is the precursor of being a victim in your own story. And it can be or it cannot be for that person, but you have to listen to them continue to tell it. And when they make themselves a victim of their own story, now they're at that point, there is no way out. They are subject to what the facts will portray moving forward, so forth and so on. So greatly appreciate your response to that, brother. And I greatly appreciate everybody else's response as it pertains to this. Good to see you and welcome to the show, Maya Jenkins Hopson. I'm sorry. Um, again, greatly appreciate everybody's perspective. And I want to kind of, let's see who um, his divine appointment said. I'll bring it up. said the ownership is purposely takes away from the king and his kingdom principles. Absolutely. Maya states that we all have different life experiences. When I hear your truth, I don't take it as not questioning just differences. It's just someone's perspective based upon their life experiences. I love that. Because she's right. And here's the issue with perspective. And I kind of started talking about it initially about the belief system because my perspective of reality is governed by my belief. If I don't believe that, then that becomes problematic. So when I look at life through the lens of what I believe. Therefore, now, even though Brother Gaddy can look at a thing and I can look at the exact same thing that he look at it, but his perspective might be different than mine. That's why it requires us to look at the same thing and get multiple perspectives on that thing so we can get closer to the truth. So I do agree with that. And I love that comment. His divine appointment says the worldview and how they exalt themselves higher than they ought to. And I think that's in response to my truth. Let's see. Anybody else before we move on? Good to see you, Sister Nodella, and welcome to the show. Miss Charlotte Jordan says it's a personal belief that to them it's true. For whatever reason, they believe it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Lisa Keys, good to see you and welcome to the show. Sister Nodella, last one. One has convinced themselves a thing is true and therefore it's truth for them, but not necessarily. Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100%. So, as we progress in this conversation, I promise you already, we're going to cover 5 points. And then we're going to kind of break those points down and then get into this phenomenal conversation. So I implore you, if you got a pen and a piece of paper, you might want a copy because we're going to dive into it. So the first category that we're going to uncover is the myth of safe beliefs. Now, beliefs aren't born in vacuums. They're societally engineered. Most men conflate cultural conditioning, i.e., emotions equal weakness, with personal truths, creating a false sense of security. Science shows this activates the brain fear centers, shutting down growth pathways. So, frequency MRI scans prove these beliefs trigger amygdala hijacks, literally shutting down your prefrontal cortex's problem solving power. And there's a quote from Carl Jung where he says that what you resist persists. I'll say it again. What you resist persists. So, Brother Gad, I'm going to drop this next question in your lap, and I know you're ready for it because that's what you do. If safety in your beliefs is an illusion, what vulnerability have you avoided? Not necessarily you, right? But what vulnerability have you avoided that might hold your greatest growth opportunity?
Um, for me, this one just fell right in the lap of accountability. Because especially when we talk about the vulnerability, because accountability, I think a lot of people think accountability is just noticing you're wrong. No, but it's taking the proper actions to correct the wrong and put yourself in the proper position that we don't make that mistake no longer, or we don't fall down that road no longer. That's accountability. A lot of people make the statement, I was wrong. Okay, nobody's perfect. I know that I've done wrong, but that's not taking accountability. It's knowing that I messed up here, and this is what I did to make that mistake. This is what lies within me that causes me to operate this way, and I need to address that thing. And actually addressing it. That I don't think you cannot leave out the action part. Actually addressing it is key to me. So when we look at this safety in our beliefs, that thing that caused me to believe that my way is the right way and it's the only way that I can make it if I do it my way. All right. And I know people that bring that mindset into marriages. You come into a marriage, and like I said, I'm only speaking from a perspective of Gaddy. When you come into a marriage and you have this mindset that I have to do it my way, you actually create what is called a lawless mentality. because that lawless mentality, that mentality tells you that there may be a right way of doing it, but then there's my way of doing it, and I'm going to do it my way. But then the problem comes is that when your way don't work, sometimes we lie to ourselves and say that it didn't work because of somebody else, or we pretend like it's working and we stew in our own mess and take no action to clean it up. So there has to be that perspective where I see myself capable of making the change so that the bigger picture is taken care of. I need so that my brother's not affected by my behavior, so that my siblings ain't affected by my behavior, my children are not affected by my behavior, my loved ones are not affected. Like it allows me to continue on through life with healthy relationships, because the focus is now on what I need to do.
I love everything you just said, to be honest with you. I think when we look at this behavior, this safety in my belief system, right? I think that mentality within itself believes or considers that what I believe within its entirety is infinite. There's nothing that you can share with me that actually goes outside of what I believe. And therefore, I'm going to hold tight to that. Now, I love when we look at the actual study that goes along with this, because it helps us to understand how emotions factor into this, because you will fight for the thing that you believe in. This is one of the main reasons why when we were in the army or work in the government system or even in the workplace, there are two things you don't talk about. You don't talk about you don't talk about politics, and you don't talk about religion. Why? Because people will literally get to the point of throwing hands when you talk about those things. Well, the same thing exists regardless of whatever it is we're talking about within the scope of your belief system. So if you believe wholeheartedly in the thing, then you will fight to support the thing that you believe in, regardless of what that person is talking about. So even in what you're saying about coming into a relationship with that mentality, that person will come into a relationship believing that their version of relationship is right and yours is wrong. And I have this image of relationship. Therefore, now within the scope of my belief on how relationship is supposed to go, anything that you do that goes outside of that is wrong. And I'm going to hold you accountable for it, not necessarily considering like the thing that you're talking about. Does that exist outside of what I know? Does that exist outside of what I believe? Let me first take responsibility for myself, right? Take responsibility for my thoughts, take responsibility for my behavior, take responsibility for my emotions. And then I could be a great accountability partner to you, because I am going to have to be accountable to the Father for me. And so I think in the realm of the entirety of this, right? The safety, the illusion of safety, because we're protecting it, not necessarily getting to the point to where I allow anybody to challenge it. That's a very dangerous game, and therefore the growth that is potentially there knocking at the door, you will reject it, shut it out, and shun it every time you get. So now, instead of becoming the best version of yourself, you look like a stale version of yourself, moving from year to year to year, because there is no new year to where you look different. So, any other thoughts that you want to kind of add to that before we move on?
No, because you had said something, right? And it's the conversation we have a lot when we talking, scripturally. Sometimes the thing that keeps us from growing in knowledge in the Most High, or even in the Word, is the idea that I already have the answers.
Mm.
I've been conditioned, because when you said that you used the term, did you use the term societal condition?
Yep.
And so like when when I hear that term, like a lot of the things that we believe and preconceive, even going into our belief, has been societally conditioned. We've heard it for years. Many people have written books saying the same thing, and a lot of preachers we've heard regurgitated the same information. And so that has become the common truth for many of us. But then when we go and we see things that contradicts what we see, and like I say, the Gaddy effect, for years, I used to look at scriptures that did not align with what I was already taught by so many preachers, and even in school when I went to study it myself, it didn't come together with what I was seeing.
Mhm.
And so when it came time to teach and preach, I would abort mission when it came to that verse. We just not gonna read that scripture. Let's go find something else. Then I started finding myself cherry picking the scripture to prove my truth instead of exhaustively reading the scripture and taking the proper information that it gave me to expose the truth. And now take that into just your own mentality. You have conditioned, and society has conditioned you that you get to do it your way. You get to be your own self, and we get up. Everything we say in this society is contradictive of a communicative lifestyle.
Mhm.
And so we create these my self-love and self-help and self this and my this and my Johnny Gill sounding people, right? Just that's what popped in my head. Like, and so we become a people that disdain community. We don't
Yes.
even know how to exist in the same space with each other no more. And the same thing. Well, if that's true with us and these my truths, well, how true is that with you and the Father, with your truth coming to His Scripture?
Mm.
Does that not make it hard for you and Him to exist in the same space because you're bringing your reality to go against His truth?
Right. I love it. No, I love it, and I think that kind of goes with what Lisa said. Lisa said that this includes understanding the scriptures, listen, study, and ask for guidance to gain understanding, allowing the Holy Spirit to teach you the truth. And when you go in there with this pre-existing programming, and that pre-existing programming now becomes the governor of your thoughts, and that governs, like going back to the notion of perspective, that governs what you see when you read the scriptures. That's why I love talking perspective versus perception, because again, when we don't necessarily understand what they are, what ends up happening is that we think that my perspective is reality. No, your perspective is just your observation of reality, and your observation is governed by your eyes, right? So now, what governs your eyes? My belief, my thoughts, all of that other great stuff. So if I go into it with these thoughts that govern my life, now, like you say, I am proof texting. I am looking for the text to prove what I already believe so I can put it as see, Gaddy, I told you right here, right here. It says right here. No, that's not how it should work. And so I love that, because that kind of goes where Miss Charlotte Jordan is saying. She said, we become closed minded where we aren't open to others' point of view or help. And I think she is spot on, because at the end of the day, like, someone else's point of view really matters in the space of reasoning, coming to the point where we get to share our thoughts together and come to a higher level of understanding, right? His divine appointment said authentic relationships, like staying in your comfort zone, can limit our ability to form. Hold on, let me see something. There we go. Can limit our ability to form deeper connections with other, which often require vulnerability. Absolutely. So I can't get to a deeper connection with anyone else if I am so guarded, so protective of how I see things, so protective of my understanding. I love the fact that you brought in the Johnny Gill reference, right? My this and my that and my this and my that. Well, is there no room for it for that other person as well? I'm wanting to understand that, because I think that by itself can actually limit our ability to grow due to a fixed mindset. It's
I
a
like what you did just now. How you merged the two. Okay,
I don't know I don't know what you're talking about, but I don't know what you're talking about. But it's all accurate, right? There's no need for me to say the things that they're already saying, because I think they're spot on as they're laying it out. And I think that's the thing, right? When we have that fixed mindset, right, then that means that the way I see it, where there is no room for it to grow, there is no expansiveness in this relationship. There is no expansiveness in my existence in this world. There is no expansiveness for this community. Well, if that's what I believe, then I really don't understand the word love. I've taken the word love and reduced it down to my interpretation of it, and there is no room outside of here for it. That doesn't fall in line with what the scriptures say.
At all. Man, the last two comments you pulled up, man. We don't realize what we do to other people when we try to bring people into a relationship with us. And there's people out there. So sometimes I'm like, please let somebody tap into this that needs to hear this, because some of us have created these environments in our own space, and we're begging someone else to join into this environment, but you haven't made it conducive for growth. In order for growth to happen, the atmosphere has to be conducive. And if it's set in stone that it will operate this one way, then growth is not possible. Right? You have to begin to make room for what you're looking for. And when we talk about relationships, my truth or my belief and my what you've done is you've already created a box for someone else to come in and sit in that box. And now, as they may like your company, they may think you're pretty, they whatever other exterior benefits that come with being in a relationship with you may exist, but when they get comfortable in that relationship and realize that they had to lose themselves and conform in order to be in your space, they will lose the desire to be in your space, because it wasn't an organic change for them. It was something that was forced in order to be in your space. And most times we create that space and that mindset because we don't want to be forced into somebody else's way of living or somebody else's box. So we just got to be mindful of that. We're asking other people to be something we're not willing to be, and that's flexible.
That's good. That's good. Before I ask this question, because you said something, I want to kind of go back. Shout out, Chris. Good to see you, and welcome to the show, man. Always good to see you. You said something just now, and I think that I want to go back to it just in case everybody missed it. You said lose yourself. Now, trust me, the narrative societally say that you shouldn't lose yourself, right? You should maintain your individuality. You shouldn't lose yourself when it comes down to a relationship, blah, 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 right? So I want you to kind of like, if you don't mind, shed a little bit more on that, because, I'm agreeing with you. But since you started this fire, I want you to kind of stoke it a little bit so it can get a little hotter.
More fire. See, you need to get your sound effect. Pew! More fire, more fire. Nah. But so me and you, we've had this conversation before when we, and you hear me say a lot that the way that we view the relationship as a society, the way we view the relationship between the Father and his people is the same way we view our relationships in our society. We have destroyed the Father's standards and righteousness. Therefore, we have no need or desire for fathers in our community. We have this concept. I think we talked about it last week. We demonize the concept of submission, and so now we have this distorted idea of man and woman relationship, and now you got men wanting to be men, women wanting to be women, and losing the natural affection for. Never mind, y'all know the scripture. But I say all that to say, when we get into a relationship with God, let's start there. When we're getting in a relationship with the Most High, when He begins to sanctify us, understand that concept of being sanctified means that there's a cleansing, a cleaning out. If He's cleaning house, the first thing that is happening is I am losing myself. And I lose myself so that I can now go on the potter's wheel as unmolded, and He can begin to mold me and make me into the image that He has for me to be, into the image of Him, right? And so if we can't lose ourselves in our relationship with the Most High, we can't be molded. Well, the same thing is true in our relationships one with another. If we can't allow ourselves to to shed off a piece of us so that we can become one together, then what we're asking for is two being together but not being one. He said, and the twain shall become one, but we're asking to remain two, but remain together. It ain't gonna work.
It ain't. It ain't. And I wanted to let you cook on that particular topic because I'm wholeheartedly agreeing with what you're saying. I think the problem is, again, when we go into it and we read what the scriptures say, the problem is that we don't allow the scriptures to read us.
Mm.
And so when we don't allow the scriptures to read us, what we're doing is we're missing what the responsibility for us being in relationship with him looks like. So we'll exist in that relationship, but we think we have zero responsibility metric for it. Or if I just go to church on Sunday, that's good. That's good enough. Right. Well, no, I'm sorry. He didn't call you to the building, he called you to himself. But there's only one way that you can get to him, and you must get to him the way that he said. It's like saying, if I come to your house, we boys, I can show up at your house, but I can only show up, the way I say I can come to your house. No, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't even pass the common sense test. Like if it's your house, you get to tell me how I come. So if hey, you need to call before you show up because I might be doing something. Okay, cool. I call before I show up. And when I show up, you let me in the front door. But here's the best part about it. What if I show up at 2 o'clock in the morning and decide to climb through the window? I mean, I'm trying to get in the house and you say I can come. Exactly. It's going to be some consequences and repercussions, right? So I think that's the thing. Like, we don't even apply a lot of common logic, to the things that we say and the things that we do within the scope of the way that we exist within this world. But yet we say that it's this. It is not that. I don't care how much you pour syrup on top of that. It'll never be pancakes. I'm sorry. So, and back in my former days, I would say something else to go along with it, which I know I can't say that no more. So, but you can pour syrup on it all day long. It ain't gonna be pancakes. I'm sorry. If he say this is the way to come in, that's the only way that you come in. And once you come in, that's when the work begins. Most of us believe that the work for the relationship existed on the front side of it to get in relationship. No, boo boo. That wasn't the work. That was the advertisement. The work happens inside the relationship. Never confuse the advertisement with the work that take place. Right? You hear people say, "Oh, well, the same thing you did to get them." That's said, no, that's inaccurate. Whatever you did to get them, that was easy. That was simple. After you get them, the work that has to be done is not the work that you're hearing, buy flowers, do this, do that. No, 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 no. That work is the internal work that must be done in you so that you don't bring all that bad behavior, that bad attitude, that bad habit into this thing and thinking that we're going to coexist together and become, like you say, become one. There is no becoming one when you're holding on to your individuality. I'm sorry. So that's why I wanted you to kind of go into that. Listen, I do not want to not acknowledge this because, again, we greatly appreciate you guys. His divine appointment, Nick D, we greatly appreciate your support to this channel. As you guys know, everything that you guys send, it goes back into what we do for this channel. Again, we appreciate you. We value you. And I do not want it to go without being noticed and go without being seen. So, again, thank you guys. You guys are awesome. Again, we greatly appreciate it. I don't even think we need to go to the second question on this, man, because we kind of already talked about it. So that's going to take us to the nostalgia deception. Now, before I get into that, listen, continue to send your questions, your thoughts, and your points of views because I think they're phenomenal. Now, the nostalgia deception. Limiting beliefs fossilize past events into sacred truths. An example of that is a teenage rejection morphs into I'm unlovable. By 2025, 68% of therapy clients attribute stagnation to these historical truths. Memories are so powerful, they hijack present decisions. I say that again. Memories are so powerful that they hijack present decisions. And I think when you allow that to set in, when you allow that to kind of be processed, I think there's nobody out there who will reject that from a thing. Our memories kind of hijacked our decision making ability. So, that being said, I kind of want to hit you with this question real quick. Give an example of a past hurt. It doesn't have to be your past hurt, it can be an example of a potential past hurt for anybody. right? Give an example of a past hurt that can potentially continue to rewrite our present truth, and what responsibility is being avoided by letting it.
This one was a hard one for me to chew on because, and I'm just gotta go the direction that because I hear so much and I see so much of our women hurt and scarred because of the silent pain that has happened in the past in our community, and a lot of things that have been swept under the rug when they brought up to family what happened, right? And I don't want to trigger anybody, so I'm trying to tread carefully, right? But I find it to be more of a common truth in our community than not, which is sad, you know. And what I notice, even though I know that I turned my volume off and it's still making noise on my phone, but what I notice in relationships is that pain, not only does it create walls and barriers when for them to continue into real meaningful relationships, because the trust factor is very low. And not just the trust factor, but the idea that there is help begins to dissipate. Um, and I don't know why I just couldn't leave this path when I was trying to think on this on this part, but and then I watch in relationships how it has created this mindset, the same mindset that we're talking now, because survival had to happen. How do I continue to live knowing this happened and everyone else called me a liar, swept it under the rug? I got to see this family member every day, every family function. I'm told that I'm not a good family member if I don't show up because I don't want to be triggered. And there's so much that goes into play with this mindset. And it creates a reality. It creates a reality in their perception of relationships, and their perception of possibly men, and their perception of family, their perception of this. I've seen all different type of outcomes when it comes to mindsets of people that have dealt with this, and the part that hurts is that no one ever tells them it's okay to go get help and heal. And so when we ask that question, what responsibility is being avoided by letting it's healing. I don't think we talk about healing as a responsibility, but it is. And I'm not saying it's easy. And I especially can't speak on nothing that I ain't gone through and say how easy or how hard it is to heal. But at some point, you have to start the process of healing. That vulnerability we just talked about has to take place. Have to be able to go speak with someone. Have to be able to let it. And I see people that do bring it up, but they bring it, and you could tell, like, them bringing it up and being blunt about it is a trauma response. It's how they deal with it. Well, if I'm open about it, then it's almost like it ain't that bad. If I joke about it, then dark humor with it, then that means that it ain't a real trauma. No, it is. You may be able to make a joke about it, or you may be able to whatever, but it keeps you from dealing with it. I think that part of the conversation can go a lot deeper. I'm gonna try not to go, leave it alone, but I couldn't leave. I don't know. I kept trying to shift because I didn't really want to.
No, you good.
Band-aids off if it's there, but I find it to be a common truth, bro. When we're dealing in our community,
You're good. Facts are facts. I'm gonna go a different route because I do agree with everything you said. I'm gonna go a different route. I think even though we'll talk about and there's another one, a failed marriage from the perspective that the relationship that I was in, I think we missed the beginning of failure when it comes down to what the child actually sees. So a failed marriage, when the child sees the marriage being failed while they're in the house, what that actually does to their relationship with mama and daddy both.
Mhm.
can that child now maintain a healthy relationship with both mom and daddy, or do that child got to go in the closet to text daddy or call daddy because they no longer live in the house, or vice versa, right? And so I think when we look at this particular question, like regardless of whatever version of failure or whatever version of past hurt may have happened, whether it was the second and tertiary effects of the failed marriage to where the child end up being raised in a concept of survival, and all they see and all they know is survival. So when they become adults, all they know is to survive, but yet they see other people and it look like they're thriving. And so now, like, how do I get to that when this is all I know? And so
Mhm.
I think there's a responsibility that has to be embraced by the parents who conditioned that child to do that. Why did I limit my child to just surviving? Because that's all I knew. Therefore, the only thing I knew was all I could teach, because unfortunately, this relationship didn't work out. What we had in mind in the beginning, it didn't manifest itself the way I had in mind. And therefore, now the child that we brought into this world together must suffer, because now we're just doing this and making end meets and so forth and so on. And I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with surviving, right? But at some point, I have to come out of that mindset. Even though I'm still surviving, I can still teach beyond surviving. Like,
Mm.
sure, I might be a single parent. Sure, I have to work. I have to keep the lights on, food on the table. I have all of these things happen. Then, of course, you got parent teacher conference. I might be able to show up. I might not.
Right.
My child get to go to work, and my child get to see their kid, their other friends being picked up by mama and daddy. But then I may not necessarily be able to do that. So you got to ride the bus, and they get to bring lunch to school. We eating free lunch. Like, that's the thing. I can be in survival and still teach thriving. So why did I limit my mindset to survival while living in survival? You see what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And again, I'm not judging anybody for that, but I think the other side of it exists, because if we can move our mind from the location of where we currently are, and teach that thing, I think that becomes imperative. It's the reason why words, are the way they are. Just because the spelling doesn't lend to it, like, I think we can teach our children to be better than who we are in the current state and time. So past hurts have a elongated effect. It can go from generation to generation to generation to generation. And then a lot of times what you'll find is that young adults carry that pain with them because the parents never healed from it.
Right.
Felt a particular type of way about their relationship.
Mhm.
And because that happened, when they taught their kids through the lens of their pain. And that doesn't work. That doesn't help for that child. That doesn't allow that child to be the best version of themselves. So now it becomes something that has to be rooted out. And I like the fact that you brought in healing, because I think healing today has become a buzzword, right?
Mhm.
Not the fact that you said it as a buzzword, because I know exactly
Yeah.
what you're talking about,
Yeah.
but it becomes a buzzword. And so what does it mean? It means for that person, a lot of times, as it pertains to a buzzword, is that I'm not where I was when I went through that pain. Well, that's
Right.
called resiliency.
Mhm.
That's encoded in your DNA. Like, all I have to do was pull myself out of that situation and not be in that situation, and by happenstance, by evolution, I'm gonna learn something from that situation. But even if what I learned from that situation is not to put myself in a situation that look like that again, that's not necessarily healing. That's just me avoiding something that can actually put me back in there. So that's kind of like what I'm saying. I think it's important for us to actually go back and consider these things, and process whether or not these past hurts, how it has rewritten our present truth, and then how that present truth governs the way that we live our life. And then, we got to kind of look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what are we avoiding when it comes down to that? Now, I said all that because I want Nick D to understand I did not skip her question by happenstance. I'm going to come to it because I really do want that to come into play here in a second, because that's something that we need to consider as well. But I do want to go to the second part of this question, because this kind of leads into what I was just talking about before we start looking at what everybody else is saying. If our memory of an event were proven objectively false tomorrow, what new truth could be liberating? I'll say it again. If our memory of an event were proven objectively false tomorrow, what new truth could be liberating?
I went back on mute. My bad. The truth can be liberating, right? And what I mean by that, I know, we can quickly go, the word is true, and that is true, right? But sometimes we have these narratives in our mind of how things happen, how things, especially when you're talking about, when you talk about the broken home and separated, like my parents separated, then I was taken from my mama and lived with my aunt. Then at one part, yeah, y'all know part of my story, and so it's just like the spiral of that separation and that being pushed away, runs a little deep. And so when we sit on this idea of this is what happened and this is why everything happened, and then you come to find out that your memory is objectively false. You perceived it through the lens of what you believed was going on. Sometimes it was mama saying daddy walked out on you. Sometimes it's daddy saying mama didn't want you. Sometimes you probably just sometimes as a kid, you're just the victim of both parents fighting for you, and one parent just not wanting the other parent to have access. But you don't know. You only know what you know. And you begin to build, as children, we begin to build our own building blocks of reality, of what happened and what took place. And we build a whole different story in our head than what actually took place. So now when we find out that things are not true and you start learning what was true, it becomes more liberating, because you're like, oh, you mean daddy did want me. Daddy did fight for access for me. So I wasn't a throwaway. Mama did want to be there. Mama was trying her best, whatever that looks like. Like for me, like, oh, my mother did go through the rehab program. My mother did make better of her life afterwards. My mother did come searching and trying to get us back and had to fight through the courts. These are things I didn't know. And like I said, I can only tell my story. These are things that I didn't know. But it was so liberating to know that the fight was happening. Now, if I didn't feel a sense of worth, I feel worth it now. I was worth the fight. And if I'm worth the fight, then I'm worth the call. So and now all of a sudden, anything is possible for me to go after. That dream I thought I wasn't good enough to pursue, I feel good enough to pursue, because I realized I was worth the fight. And so I'm glad you kind of went to that dynamic, because it just spills right over into this part of that question. So
I love what you said there. I think in the realm of interconnectivity, I have a philosophy. Whatever situation that you find yourself in, you are participating. I think a lot of times when we look at wrong that is being done, we never consider our level of participation. We only identify wrong that it was done according to our eyes. So our perspective of a thing is jaded by my belief of the thing, and my belief of the thing is based upon my interpretation of what the thing should look like. But even if I do not know what the thing is supposed to look like, going like to what we talked about previously, according to what the word actually says, then I made it up in my head, and I'm holding you accountable for what I made up. But then at a later point in time, when I sit down with somebody who has the ability to kind of ask me some questions and kind of not necessarily attack me, but kind of get me to consider some things outside of what I said. Well, had you considered X, Y, and Z? No, I did not. Well, if you did not consider X, Y, and Z, how did you conclude this was the outcome according to your perspective? Well, see, it was because, well, no. Answer the question. So now someone is taking some not only well-known facts, but some potential facts, some assumptions that could be, and laying those assumptions on the table and asking you to consider those assumptions. Because within the within the scope of the entirety of this, I think being able to look at what took place, address the facts, lay the facts on the table without your judgment, without your interpretation of it, just lay the facts on the table, right? When I lay the facts on the table, is the story exactly the way that you told it? Or did you add your own little spin to the story before you gave it to me? And allowed me to formulate my truth, because that's what we're talking about today. Formulate my truth based upon your story. Kind of going back to what you said, and I'm glad you said that. Like when you went back and considered some other things, and I'm not saying that somebody told him that story, right? But when you went back and considered some other things, it kind of like, wait, okay, I did not know this. That puts me at a level of comfort to know that I was worth fighting for, right? And I love hearing that, especially when you have, and I think Maya was mentioning that about the a foster child, right? I don't think we really understand, first and foremost, the precursor that took place before the child became a foster child. And then we don't understand what the parent went through, whether or not they attempted to get the child back. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I know everybody's story. That would be disingenuous for me to try to articulate that. But everybody has a story. And regardless of our interpretation of that story, they should be allowed to articulate that story. And I think that's key. And the part of it, and heart goes out to them. But when that child becomes an adult, I think the hardest thing is to open the door for that parent to be able to come back and have a conversation with that child if the opportunity presents itself, right? But I think the same thing holds true in relationships, whether it's a foster parent or whether it's a broken home, right? I think adult children should offer that other parent the opportunity to come back and articulate what, not necessarily what actually happened, but the fact that, hey, I still want to be a part of your life. I still this, that, and the third. I don't believe it's a good idea. That's just me, that we hold our parents accountable for what they didn't know in relationship. Because at the end of the day, look at your life and consider how much you didn't know in relationship. What if your kids held you accountable for it? If you are fortunate enough not to have kids, great. You got away unscathed. Congratulations. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of these things tend to recycle each other and it becomes very difficult. Now, this kind of brings me to that question that Nick D had before we get into the other statements. And it was based upon a fixed mindset. Can a fixed mindset lead to limiting beliefs?
I I have to say yes. Well, first, you know how we do here on this platform. You say can a right? It can, uh, but absolutely, because I understand what she's asking. A fixed mindset to me is the foundation of limiting beliefs. Because if it's fixed, I and I know that we can go into the nuances, but let's just deal with just the concept of the wording, right?
Mhm.
Fixed means is unchanging, unmovable. It's fixed, it's locked in. When you put fixtures in, it's so that a thing doesn't move. So it's locked in place. So that means everything else is unreachable as long as your mindset is fixed. All right. And so we have to be willing to say, hey, my mindset or my thought process or my belief, even of the most high, should be able to evolve. I can go on YouTube right now and start looking up all the different influences that went into translations of the scripture, that went into this, that went into these concepts, and what about all of these different councils that took place that actually shaped the way we view the scripture today. We could talk about that. The people, I mean, you could spend a whole weekend diving down a rabbit hole of that thing.
Yeah.
Right. So if that's true, then how much evolution is possible in my understanding of the Most High?
Mhm.
How far away from the core understanding that once was are we removed from that thing now? So to think that I'm in a space in 2025 to actually have full understanding, and we're talking about the English came around. Let me see, the first English translation I got by Williams Tinsdale was 1526. All right. So you're gonna tell me, oh, we talking about the English is so this and so that. Well, if the English was way back, how much understanding am I missing since then? Like we say so much things, but like when we say it, it makes me realize, oh, maybe we don't understand everything. Maybe we have more to know. Maybe we have more to study. Maybe we need the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, to reveal more. And so when I hear the term fixed mindset, no matter what it is, and I always use the scripture because I know we got some true believers in this community. So, but yeah.
So I'm with you. I would say, and you guys got to catch this. What I'm saying, I would say that a fixed mindset is the revelation of limiting beliefs. Even within, like, can I have a fixed mindset about a particular thing? Sure, I can. I can have a fixed mindset that you won't move me off believing in the Most High. However, I can't have a fixed set about the Most High. So it's like, I think a lot of times we look at fixed mindsets and we say that it's bad to have a fixed mindset. It all depends on how you look at it. It all depends on how you code it, right? If I'm saying, like, can I have a conversation with an atheist? Absolutely. And can have a great conversation with an atheist. But that does not mean that he or she is going to change my perspective of believing in the Most High. That just means that I can have a different lens being revealed to me in the midst of how they see the world. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if I take the fixed mindset and apply it to the Most High, now I'm in error. If I take the fixed mindset and apply it to the Holy Spirit, now I'm in error. So my mind is fixed on Him, but within the scope of being fixed on Him, my understanding of Him can't be fixed. Because if I fix my understanding of Him based upon what I currently know, then I am limiting my perspective of Him, and now I am limiting Him in my day-to-day existence. So that's why I love that question. A fixed mindset can be 100% the revelation of a limiting belief.
And I like the way you went there, because after as soon as you started speaking, I automatically thought in my head, like, hey, but fixed doesn't always have to go on the negative, because when Paul says this one thing that I do, he was fixed. He's locked in right there. And so I'm glad you said that, because being fixated on the Most High, right? That's where my focus is fixed on Him, means that I now shun all others, which is what He requires of us. So that is a fixed mindset. And yes, I am limited to believe only in one true Elohim. That's it.
That's it.
I only got space for one.
And that just means I have a boundary around it. So I won't be moved off of it. But within the scope of that boundary, growth can happen. So thank you for that. And thank you for that great question, Nick D. I got all the other comments. Trust me, we're going to get to it. But this kind of like takes us to a point where I think we're going to enjoy. And this is where we take our action interrupt. Okay. As you guys see, the action interrupt for this week is I want you guys to write one belief that you will interrogate this week. I don't care what it is. Just think about what belief that you actually have in your life and what belief you want to change. And I want you to interrogate that belief. In other words, I want you to pin that belief in the corner and I want you to question it. Ask it questions about itself so it can reveal to you where you are in the scope of that particular belief. Okay. That takes us to crisis and chaos as the uninvited teacher. Now, breakdowns such as divorce and burnout tends to expose belief system cracks. Most ignore these wisdom alarms, yet data shows men who leverage crisis for belief audits are 5 times likelier to surpass prior success within 2 years. So I think what we have to realize is that desirable outcomes die when pain is numbed not mined for insights. I say again, desirable outcomes die when pain is numbed, not mined for insight, which is why I want you guys to really do the interrogation this week. So, getting to the question, in what ways can we identify crisis or chaos in our life before it becomes obvious that it exists, whether it is finances, relationships, etc.? Again, in what ways can we identify crisis or chaos in our life before it becomes obvious that it exists?
The process that just went through my mind, I want to share it with the chat. Like, if you go through this conversation step by step, it to me it leads to the answer here. Like, I'm looking at I'm looking at how we fell down to this point. We went from the myth of safe beliefs, right? We talked about it. We gone down to the nostalgia deception, right? And as we started breaking down this mindset of a fixed mindset of a my truth mindset and the accountability, the healing, we get there, and then we get to this question, because now that we've done the work and we've gained some understanding beyond what we grew up knowing, that's not a word, knowing. Now my eyes are open to be able to see the chaos before it develops. But because, and I use this, I don't like a lot of buzzwords, but our toxic mindset that we had before, we didn't know it was toxic, but it was. That toxic mindset that we had before clouded our vision, and so we didn't see the chaos before it came, because toxicity and chaos kind of walks hand in hand. So we've been living in chaos so long. When our finances start getting messed up and our relationships start corroding, and we're like, how did we get here? Well, because you haven't removed the toxicity inwardly. You haven't removed the chaos inwardly that you operate in, that has caused everything that you touch to corrode around you. Your behavior and your habits definitely your habits create bad financial habits as well. You can't be an irresponsible person and a great financial person. You're going to do something that's going to affect your finances. You could be stingy. Some people think they're good at finances because they cheat. No, that's the way, I guess. But when I look at this question, for me, it's like everything that the foundations we've already laid in this conversation is the way that we grow. Like, even if we isolate finances, you have to grow and learn finances. You have to know what bad habits look like. So when you're about to do, I know that I'm about to make a decision that can affect my finances, and like, who next week gonna be tight, but I'm gonna do this anyway. But I made that judgment call to do it. All right. And we do that sometimes. All right. But once you've gotten to the point to where you got understanding of how a thing works, now you know how relationships work. Now you can see you can see not even the process of chaos coming. You can see it before it actually shows up. You start seeing the signs of the division in the relationship happening. The mindsets is shifting away from each other. Well, it's time to get closer. It's time to have more conversations. It's time to kick it more. Time to hang out more. All right. Yeah, your spouse is not necessarily your friend. I know some people have different concepts on that, right? Your spouse should be your best friend, or your spouse is not your friend. However you view it, but we still got to spend time together. And we got to do friendly things together, because the relationship is, if that's the most important aspect in the relationship, is the relationship itself, then the relationship is due some we time, some laughing and playing, not just coming together because we got to talk about this and we got to do this. Like, we've turned relationships to a business sometimes. We only come together for business meetings and finance meetings, but we don't come together just to kick it.
I love it. I'm loving everything that you're saying. And you're right. My spouse ain't my friend, they're my spouse, but they can be friendly, and they should be friendly. I think that's a big thing. I think And I'm loving all of the comments. I'm seeing everything from monitor your thoughts and realistic expectation, identify them and filter them, behavioral changes, go from thinking positively about your relationship to negative. I'm loving all of this. But I think one of the first things we need to do is gain control of this thing. This thing right here is out of control. This thing right here is the reason for all of the problems that I'm experiencing. I'm not saying it's the only reason. Sure, there are some things that contribute to it, but this is responsible for all of it. There are these two concepts that we have to understand. There are contributing factors and determining factors. Just because, and I'm just going to use this as an example because we talked about it. Just because the shutdown has happened, that might be a contributing factor. But what is the determining factor that I may need to go to USAA and get along? The fact that I was living my best life all the way up to this point. I did not set aside something. I was not planning, right? I did not financially plan my life the right way. So now I am dependent upon the next check. So now I am subject to, right? And this isn't judgment, this is just honesty. And I think when we understand some of those things that exist within me that are working against me in this life that I'm trying to live, then I have to be honest with myself, realistic introspection, right? I have to be honest with myself with what I see. Stop making excuses, stop sugarcoating reality, stop trying to make yourself feel good about all of this. No, you need to be honest and lay it all on the table. And sometimes you may need to go to somebody and say, I need help. We also need to identify some of the things that we were taught that weren't right. And I'm not necessarily talking about what was taught in the home. I'm also talking about what was taught outside the home. There's I can share. I just give you one right now, and somebody's going to disagree with me, and y'all know how I am. I'm okay with you disagreeing with me. I didn't say it for you to agree. I just said it for you to consider. Budgeting is probably the number one thing that they teach you in saying that that is good. But what I would share with you is that it is not. Budgeting is not a good thing because budgeting sets you in a mental mindset to where you now exist and you're torn between two versions of yourself. I am budgeting for, so you believe that the for is going to happen, but then there's limitations on this side. So I have to prevent this and I have to prevent that. Wait, if I'm not mistaken, I think he said that I come that you may have life and have life more abundantly. So if I never strive toward more abundantly, then I never understand what that looks like. So now two things must exist, right? In me in that moment. I'm reading what he says and I'm believing what he says, but I never experienced what he said. Therefore, that's the manifestation that I don't believe it. So at some point, you're going to have to relinquish everything that was taught from you taught to you that was designed to keep what he said from you. I'll say that part again. At some point, you're going to have to learn to relinquish everything that was taught to you that was designed to keep him from you. And unfortunately, there's some things that we embrace and we hold firm to it as though it is the truth. It is not. If we set things up and do them accordingly moving forward, then they don't have to be like there can be a life of abundance. That's not just finances, that's relationship. In fact, I will go as far as saying this. Most people we observe, and remember, you're observing somebody else's highlight reels, not their reality. So never get confused with what you see on social media as the 100% truth about somebody else's life. Because I would say, on one hand, you'll see this person thriving financially, but they're suffering relationally. Or this person over here who is thriving relationally, but they're suffering financially. Well, when you have two opposing ideas that exist in the same person, that reveals a thing. So, again, once we become completely transparent and honest with that realistic introspection, thank you, Nick D. If we become honest with that realistic introspection and lay that on the table and go back to what Gaddy said earlier and let that thing be sacrificed. What is this thing that brought this to the table? Well, I was taught this and therefore I believe that. Well, lay that belief on the table and allow that belief to be sacrificed and let it go. You may need help with that. You may not be able to do it within your own within yourself because you've practiced that thing the entirety of your life, right? It has become a stronghold for you. You'll fight tooth and nail to keep that thing. So I think that's important for us to understand. Any other thoughts before we continue to move on, man? Because time ain't slowing down.
No, I ain't. But I like everything you just said. That was, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, let's go to the next one. What are some lessons that crisis? What are some lessons that crisis and chaos is trying to teach? And if I become a student to those lessons, what is the outcome?
So when we talk about crisis and chaos, it teaches a few lessons, and I don't know if I can pull them all out, But I know it. I know for me, the immediate thing that crisis and chaos teaches me is me. It teaches me my bad habits. It teaches me my bad mindsets. Because I think a lot of time we like to blame God for a lot, and we blame God, we blame Hasatan, we blame everything we can but ourselves, right? We go, oh, the devil is trying to rob me of my joy, or God is testing me and I keep falling into the same test and I can't get out the test because no, you're in the same cycle that you keep putting yourself in because you haven't learned you first. And so once you're able to see yourself in the midst of this chaos, in the midst of these crises, now there are some things that happen in life that uncontrollables, right? And we're not speaking from the concept of the uncontrollables because those things, if you're a believer, I think we understand how to handle the uncontrollables, right? And if we have a strong community, then we can kind of help hold each other up during these uncontrollable times, But as talking about the controllables, the things that are happening in life, and some things we think are uncontrollables, but they are products of our mindset. And so when I first learned me and I first see me, and I understand how I've created the chaotic environment around me, and we end up in these crises in our lives because of years of layers of the things that we've built in our life, or the mindsets that have gotten us to a place that withholds our joy, and we think it's something else withholding our joy. It's this mindset we've created sometimes. And so when we and I'm trying to remember exactly how you worded it, and if we become students to these lessons, what is the outcome? I think now we find that place now to where we can begin to remold, right? We can now fix our mind on Christ, because those whose mind is stayed on me, you'll keep them in perfect peace. Those whose mind is stayed on you, right? That's what the prophet says. So now we understand that, but I can't. We have a struggle with fixating our mind on him or putting our mind on him because we don't know how to get out of ourselves, because we put ourselves so deep into a trap that we're lost stewing in our own chaos. And it's a long road, it seems like, to get to him. And somebody told us one day that all we got to do is stew in it and he'll rescue us out of there because we believe. These are the things we have to. We've taken the human responsibility out of being a human so deep, and it's so psychological that we don't even see it. We're told that it's okay to stew in our own mess and not do the work to get out of it because you're a believer. Well, believer have action. I should have already I should have given it to him as a believer in the first place. But that's a whole. I'm about to make a whole left turn.
No, you're good. You're good. I love where you're at. And that's why I mentioned contributing factors and determining factors previously, right? Because you're right. There are some things that goes beyond my control. But if those things go beyond my control, then why am I fixed on those things? Why do I even hold conversations about those things? Because those things profit me none whatsoever. What are the determining factors in my life? I think at this question, what lesson is crisis and chaos trying to teach me? Crisis and chaos is trying to teach me about me. It's trying to teach me how far off the mark I am. It doesn't really matter how many people that I can talk to get them to be on my side about a thing. If I get me a little, cheerleading coalition to side with me on what actually happened in my life, then the only thing they're doing is they're taking part of the exacerbation and continuation of the life that I have created within myself. And make no mistake about it, when I move from this location to this location, this person to this person, this job to this job, I create the exact same thing I had previously. So that also should reveal that my cheerleading coalition, they're not for me. They're only with me. I need people in my corner that's for me. I need people to say, hey, bro, can I talk to you? Because I'm observing your behavior. And that's not who you said you were trying to be. That's not who I know you said you want to be. So let's talk about this real quick, because at the end of the day, that's what brothers are supposed to do. I don't want somebody in my corner who just observed me doing this thing and then just be like, oh well, you grown, you do what you want to do. So I think those things happen. It reveals chaos, reveals me to me. Now, chaos looks different from person to person. Crisis looks different from person to person. To the stubborn and emotionally immature person, crisis looks like a conversation that challenges what you believe. To an emotionally mature person, crisis looks like something in their life that has the ability to kind of knock them off tilt, a storm, if you will, right? Because they can listen to what's going on. Maybe they don't necessarily have a person in their life to where, well, they don't have that person that can be completely honest and transparent with them. So therefore, now the storm overtakes them. And then now they have to, ride the waves of the storm and then kind of figure it out, like, how did the storm happen? How did I get to this point? What signs did I miss? Trust me when I tell you, crisis and chaos will breadcrumb you into the storm. If you miss the breadcrumbs, let me say it again. If you miss the crumbs, you will exist in the storm. I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna get off of it because I mentioned it a couple of different times before. This, what is going on right now, that everybody's experiencing right now, this wasn't new. This was predicted. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Stop playing. This shutdown, we knew it was coming eventually. It wasn't just, oh goodness, it's going to happen today. No, this was talked about a long time ago. So if you weren't preparing for it, it's only because you missed the crumbs leading up to reality. That's the part that I keep stressing. We got to look at it and we have to be completely honest with ourselves. How did I miss the breadcrumbs? Did I just take it for granted? Did I assume this? Did I assume that? So forth and so on. And then when I look at it, now it's like, I get it now. Now I understand what took place. And now I can get to the point of realizing, like, okay, for future events, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this. So now you start game planning your future. When you game plan your future, those breadcrumbs, when you see them, you'll be like, aha, I'm ready now, right? Don't wait for the chaos to happen and then start preparing. Prepare before the chaos and crisis actually happen. And that's the main reason why I wanted to have that break so that everybody can kind of put this together and get it. I love the fact that you said it, right? That when you go back and look at the trail of this conversation is leading you into the direction that you're supposed to go. So that being said, rewiring just one belief can reactivate dormant dopamine pathways within 48 days. Within 14 days. Cataracts, man, y'all don't judge me. Rewiring just one belief can reactivate dormant dopamine pathways within 14 days. That's why I want you guys to do that interrogation this week. Okay. That takes us to, and keep bringing those comments. I love them, but I'm looking at the time and we got to go. That takes us to the last, not even the last one, the next one, which is generational echo chambers, right? And generational echo chambers is kind of unquestionable or unquestioned beliefs replicate intergenerationally, like we kind of talked about previously. Fathers unconsciously pass down survival truths. Joy requires suffering. Normalizing struggle. Boys internalize these as fate until they become legacies or perceive inadequacies. And so the questions that I have for all of our viewers is, what belief did you inherit that solved a problem for the previous generation, but drastically failed for you? Okay, I ask it again. What belief did you inherit that solved the problem for the previous generation but drastically failed for you? James Baldwin said it best. He says, limiting beliefs are borrowed cages. Okay. So when we really dive into it, it really kind of helps us to consider what we're trying to bring into this future that is requiring a better and higher version of ourselves. So that said, I don't know if I want to dive into all of this. So let me just get to the audit part. What are the potential blowbacks if you audited every truth inherited from your family line? What are the potential blowbacks if you audited every truth inherited from your family line?
Understanding the world that we live in today, and that even our family members are not exempt from being a part of the world system and the world mindset. Uh, when you begin to audit every truth that you inherited, you will eventually walk into something different. You would then find either the truth. Man, I knew that was going to happen. Right at the end, too. Uh, I know, right? You will either find the truth or you'll begin a pathway to the truth. And when you do this, there has to be a warning. So before you do your homework that coach gave you, can I give a warning real quick, coach? It's a lot of uncomfortable moments in there, because when you begin to audit and you do the homework he gave us and you start to put one of the truths that and one of the beliefs that you have on the table and start interviewing it and then investigating it and digging deep into it, it's going to get real uncomfortable first. You're going to become uncomfortable with yourself, because now the thing that you were assured of and you walk confident in, you now have to lower your head to the understanding that you don't know what you thought you knew. And it begins to work in you emotionally, mentally, and it doesn't sit well until you and it's going to, if you're doing it right, it's going to build this fire in you to really get that understanding. And now you're going to go and you're going to dig. But the part that people don't tell you when it comes to this part of the conversation is that a lot of people that you hold dear are going to give you an ultimatum. You believe what we believe, or you're just going to be exiled. You either continue to say what we've been saying. You know what? We were raised this way. My mama raised me this way. If it was good for your grandmama and it was good for me, it's good for you. Well, no, it ain't. Because if it was, then I wouldn't be in the process of unlearning and relearning. And this is real. Like, and I'm telling you first. And then next thing you know, that Rolodex that you have, I know we don't have a Rolodex no more, but y'all know what I mean, all right? That Rolodex that you have begins to thinning out. The people that you can call when you start seeing things begin to thinning out. But then the joy in it is there's people in there that you didn't think that you can call when you end up on this process, that you end up being able to call, and you're like, what?
Mm-hmm.
You mean because I'm telling y'all don't understand why I talk about my big bro role the way I do is because the way the Most High works, right? When I even in the church, it was things I didn't believe, things I didn't do, holidays I didn't celebrate, right? And he knew that, and he used to always be like, "Man, you be all right, man. It ain't that deep, man. Don't worry about it." But when it was time to move, and it was time to make a shift, and the Most High was telling me it's time to shift, I did not want to shift. What happened was he started shifting Roland's mindset. And randomly, me and Ro was talking about some stuff, and he asked me a question, and the father was showing us the same thing and moving us in the same direction. And eventually, on the same week, pushed both of us out the door. And it was like, oh, you sent us out 2 by 2. It's my brother. Like, so it gets hard, it gets heavy. People walk away, but he'll give you a brother and a sister in the midst.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. I agree wholeheartedly. I think when you start doing this audit, not only will it reveal the things that held you handicapped within you, it'll also reveal the people that held you hostage within them. I think some people struggle with being able to see in the potential in you because they're still trying to remember who you used to be or who they want you to be. So I think a lot of that becomes revealing when you go through this audit. You go through this audit and realize the mindsets that are holding you back, that are keeping you hostage, that are preventing you from experiencing the best versions of yourself. The relationships that you keep that keep you within this kind of limiting mindset. They only expect this of you. Like when you start doing something that's better and better than what you could even imagine yourself doing. Next thing you know, people start looking at you different. They start treating, responding to you differently as well. And I love the fact that you mentioned the ultimatum because I agree wholeheartedly. And so what we have to realize is that legacies erode when truth isn't interrogated, only inherited. I'll say it again. Legacies erode when truth isn't interrogated, only inherited. And I know what time it is, and I thank you guys for being here. We got one last point, and I think this last point, I'm gonna skip the generational echo chamber, and I want to jump down to the illusion of choice. And we're talking the illusion of choice, and you got to hear it and process it. Beliefs dictate decisions before logic engages. I'll say it again. Belief dictates decisions before logic engages. Scientists confirm the subconscious makes 95% of choices, meaning what you feel like your reality is mostly on I can't even get it out. Meaning what you feel like your reality is mostly autopilot. Men who disrupt this cycle thrive by scheduling belief interrogations. Even Eleanor Roosevelt say you gain strength when you turn wounds into wisdom. So, Brugad, I want to just throw this question out, and I think this is going to be our last question for the day because I think this is the thing that kind of helps us to move forward. And I don't have this question. Yeah, I do. If your reality, if your reality is a gallery of subconscious choices, what exhibit would you urgently replace? And I'm talking to you right now. What exhibit would you urgently replace?
Hmm. I feel like did I read this one ahead of time? Man, if your reality is a gallery of subconscious choices, what exhibit would you urgently replace? Um, to be honest, urgently replace because I would definitely walk through and get to replacing. Just being honest with myself about myself.
Mhm.
But I th- it's it's hard to pinpoint. So because I never wanted my relationships to move the way they moved, right? And trying to pinpoint blame or where should I make change, that's the hard part. But my reality is my eagerness to build the family that I never saw growing up became became my drive behind diving into these relationships. Maybe they were the wrong relationships, or maybe we just had the wrong mindset going into those relationships, whatever the case may be. But there's something in that realm right there. It's like maybe because I think sometimes when you have that desire and you chase the desire, you make the bad decisions. You make the decisions you shouldn't have made because you're chasing the desire, which will cause you to chase feelings versus walking in the logic of things. Like, and there's a lot of lessons I've learned. And I think if I had to start all over, I'll think a little better. I didn't ever say to be perfect, but I think a little better. But somewhere in that realm right there, my desire to chase the outcome. I wanted the family, the house with white picket fence so my kids didn't hear gunshots growing up like I did. I didn't want them to experience what I experienced. I didn't want them to be in a community of fatherless, a fatherless community. I wanted them to have mother and father, but I chased that so much that I don't think we made actually having the relationships the primary focus. It was having the family.
I like that. I'm with you on this one, Lisa. This question is really hard to pinpoint, and I think initially, my thought is rooted in the idea that we all want the same thing, and that's very difficult to mentally process that we all want the same thing. It's disheartening to know that we all don't want the same thing. It's disheartening to know that there are some people who are comfortable staying in their truth and not coming to the realization that community is not subject to your truth. Um, so I think that's for me, and I'm saying that for me based upon where I am right now in my life. We all don't want the same thing. And when we recognize that, I have to be okay with whatever somebody else chooses for their life. But by the same token, I can still have a level of compassion for that person when I know that they're going down the wrong path. I just don't have to take ownership of the fact that they're going down the wrong path and become emotionally attached to the fact that they're doing so. If that person wants to go, let them go. But at the end of the day, build with those who will build with you, right? And I'm talking this from a community standpoint because I think when you look at it, the family is the foundation of the community. I'll say it again. The family is the foundation of the community, going back to your point. So if the family is the foundation of the community, it requires mommy and daddy both to teach child according to what the scripture says, train them up in the ways that they should go. Where they're going to go to the community, right? So when we go to the community, we are healthy for community. Now the community sees what healthy family living looks like. They look like what they understand what kingdom living is all about. So now understanding for those of us who desire that to be the focus, as opposed to other people who are saying that separate but equal, right? It's like, no, that's not how it's supposed to be. I'm sorry. So, and again, going back to Lisa's point, there's so many other thoughts that go into that. But I kind of wanted to put it at community focus because if we put it at community focus, that includes the family because the family is the foundation of the community. And that being said, everybody don't want the same thing when it comes down to family. That's the disheartening part. And my heart really goes out for people who don't want that. I'm not saying that everybody's destined to be married. I think that's the other part of it as well, right? It's not so much as it's a destination, it's an honor. And if that honor falls within your wheelhouse, to God be the glory. If it does not, to God be the glory. It doesn't really matter. But, understanding that it's a huge undertaking when you do so. So that's just my thoughts on it. Look, I think for the sake of time, we're going to forego final thoughts because I think we put out a lot of information. We had a lot of great conversations, a lot of great interaction for you guys in the comments, and I greatly appreciate you guys for that. And nonetheless, we're going to remind you every Friday night right here at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Hearts of Men podcast, where you have myself, Brother Gaddy, rolling down the street, who isn't with us tonight, and Brother Garfield Martin, who isn't with us tonight as well. They'll be back next week. So that being said, listen, you guys continue to be the best versions of yourself. Be awesome, be blessed, and let the best version of yourself be a blessing to somebody else. And we'll see you guys again next week.